Hello everyone, I went to Bungie to play some Final Shape stuff early. I've talked about exotic weapons, I've talked about exotic armor, and now I want to talk about most of the other things that I experienced, specifically Prismatic and the new activity. I have 2 videos already live. Please go check them out after this one or before this one. I really don't care what order you want to watch them in. What I'm not going to be talking about in this video is legendary weapons or the roles that come on some of these weapons. I didn't think it was super important. I didn't try out the heal gun. I'm sorry, we were really pressed for time and we weren't playing in a group that often. I'm also not talking about any of the story at all in terms of like actual plot elements, mainly because they don't want us to, but also because I literally don't know anything outside of the first mission because I turned off dialogue and subtitles, so don't worry about that. When I was at Bungie, I was allowed to play some parts of the Legendary campaign. Again, dialogue, subtitles off. But I did actually play some gameplay, and I played with Prismatic on all of the classes, although only on my Titan in the Legend campaign. And I know I like to joke around that Destiny has become a very easy game if you know how to do an ounce of build crafting. But Prismatic feels like it takes it to another level of easy that I did not think possible. So let's quickly go over Prismatic in case you haven't seen or heard anything about it just yet. You're going to get access to specific parts of other subclasses within the Prismatic subclass itself, and the goal is to combine all of these different choices into one cohesive setup. You also have access to the Transcendence mechanic, where you fill a light and dark meter, and when you do, you can go Transcendent, which gives you a lot of bonus power and a unique grenade. Filling this light and dark meter is done by doing light or dark damage. So Arc, Solar, Void for light, Stasis and Strand for dark, or Kinetic for a little bit of both. You're going to have access to quite a lot of fragments as well, all with their own unique effects, and there is plenty of theory crafting to be done here. I have a quick build that I came up with at the event that we're going to show as an example here for what it's going to be like to build with Prismatic. Part of why I'm excited for Prismatic is because it feels like the build crafting space is just going to absolutely explode. All the different abilities and aspects and fragments, exotic class items. It was tough for me to really wrap my head around how much stuff there is to do with a Prismatic subclass. I started with my exotic class item, which is only active when you have Prismatic equipped, which is something I feel like I might have glossed over when first discussing exotic class items, so I just really wanted to reiterate that. Exotic class items only work if you have Prismatic equipped. I didn't have time to sit and think about the best setup for very long, so I just went with something that sounded neat in the moment. Osmiomancy and Starfire on my class item. Grenades recharge from empowered weapon damage and final blows, and Osmiomancy gives me more grenade energy on hits in addition to the Cold Snap benefits. I put on Cold Snap Grenade and Empowering Rift to start, and then I rounded out the kit based on that. Feed the Void for Devour, more grenade energy, the new Solar aspect, summons a Solar Buddy, and then some fragments. Facet of Devotion, killing targets hit with a Stasis or Strand debuff gives light Transcendence energy. Hope, collecting or destroying an elemental pickup gives Transcendence energy of that type, light or dark. Balance, rapid light defeats give melee energy, rapid dark defeats give grenade energy. Dawn, powered melee hits give me radiant, and melee final blows make allies radiant. That's why I have Arcane Needle on. And Purpose, orbs of power give me an effect based on my super equipped. In this case, it's the new super, Song of Flame. The goal of my build is simple. Throw cold snaps as often as possible while staying buffed with as many things as possible. And in Patrol, yeah, it works pretty well. Not really too much of a challenge, but there is a meta goal of Prismatic, and that's to maximize how much you're able to go Transcendent. Transcendent is basically like having a second super. It's like Diet Super. The Warlock grenade is a Void Stasis grenade, black hole grenade with slowing features that implodes, suppressing targets and dealing damage. And while Transcendent, you're buffed even more. Melee damage regens your grenade, and vice versa. Kills extend Transcendence, weapon damage goes up, you get damage resistance. Like, I cannot begin to describe how good it is and how quickly you can charge it if you are playing into Prismatic how you should be. How should you be? If there's one thing you need to do to play Prismatic to the maximum, it's just make sure that you're dealing damage with alternating light and dark damage. That's it. Bit easier said than done, I will say, but if there is something that I want to drill into people's heads, it's use both elements as equally as you possibly can and use your fragments to juice your Transcendence. That's why kinetics are going to have some added value. They charge both at a reduced rate with a fragment to buff that. In this clip, it took me just over a minute to charge Transcendence, and this was with me doing some other stuff in the background, not 100% optimized in trying to recharge it. A minute! Imagine when you're actually trying. Better Devils, Strand, Indebted Kindness, Arc. I'm just alternating. I'm flip-flopping. My abilities, I'm a little heavy into Darkness. Probably could have balanced that a little bit better, but I had the Fragment to juice me with Darkness debuff kills. Then you go Transcendent, and you just alternate your abilities, and you go for such a long time. Grenade, melee, grenade comes back. Use it to get your melee back. Use it to get your grenade back. As long as there are enemies there, you will be Transcendent for a very long time. Again, I will reiterate, I'm in a patrol zone. I realized that, but I had a similar experience in the campaign with my Titan. My Titan got to play in the Legend campaign with Prismatic. I played with what the game will be giving you when you first access Prismatic. My build was a point contact cannon brace build, which just, gives your Thunderclap extra oomph, which Prismatic does get. And then I just equipped the default Prismatic subclass that you get. No other changes. And I, in my team of 2, I got to play with Skill Up, love you, bud, proceeded to completely annihilate the Legend campaign without any resistance. I wasn't allowed to record the stuff that I'm talking about right now, so you're really only going to get to see me on patrol, or maybe I'm showing the first mission, which I don't have Prismatic in. It's not going to give the best representation of what I'm talking about, is what I'm trying to say. It's just all I got. The Titan Transcendence Grenade suspends and jolts targets. This combo ended up being insanely strong with my point contact build, to the point where I would be wiping out entire groups of spawning in enemies when I had Transcendence active. Throw grenade, everything gets suspended, go in for a big thunderclap, everything dies, on Legend, rinse, repeat, non-stop. This is also giving me back energy as I'm doing it. Every kind. Pick one. Name it. I'm getting it. We were trouncing the campaign. If you can figure out how Prismatic works, in which I just kind of told you how it works, I'm telling you, we need Grandmaster campaign. We were just crushing it. It was not even fair. I will say that as a solo, the campaign will still likely be the challenge experience that you're looking for on Legend. It was definitely tougher than being in a group because you just have no one else to rely on. There's no reses, there's more enemies to fight. But Transcendence, just to me anyway, trivialized the experience in a group. And I did relay this feedback to Bungie already while I was there, because part of why I like the Legend campaign is because it actually provided some pushback versus regular campaigns. My peers had a bit of a different experience on Hunter, because Hunter's Transcendence Grenade functions like a trip mine, so it's not as simple to use as the Titan one or even the Warlock one. I can see how their experience might have been different after I played on a Hunter for a little bit in Patrol, as things like Trip Mine and Lightning Grenade aren't the most commonly used PvE grenade, at least when you can't stick them to enemies. Hunter Grenade, Transcendence Grenade, I believe you can stick to enemies though, so like, aim precisely. In terms of the new supers, I used them for a little bit. I don't think I have a ton of gameplay recorded with them. Void Titan's Twilight Arsenal is pretty fun. Seemed like decent damage. The axes that other people get to use are pretty cool, or you can just use them all yourself and just immediately chuck them or do some kind of light chip damage. But without any sort of damage testing, that's all I can really give in terms of perspective. Same kind of feedback goes for Warlock and Hunter. I need a lot more perspective on the supers in harder content before I can give any sort of a true analysis. I didn't really go to this event to like sit there and crunch numbers about like, how much does Song of Flame do when I like that wasn't what I sought out to do. Maybe other people did that. I don't know, but it's not what I did. Let's move to Overthrow, which is the new activity in the Pale Heart of the Traveler, which is the new destination. So first thing, Pale Heart is a completely solo destination unless you queue into specific parts of the patrol area via the Overthrow map icon. Otherwise, you are not going to see randoms pop in at all. Now, at first, when I heard that Overthrow was a public event style activity, I was like, oh boy, I don't know if people are going to be too happy about that, thinking back to like the Season 10 era. Here's how it works. You need 1,000 points to progress. Encounter completions give 450 points. Kills on enemies give a very small amount. Chests give a little bit. HVTs give some points. But essentially it's going to come down to do 2 encounters to get the bulk of your points, with kills and other miscellaneous stuff kind of rounding it out. You go to stage 2, it's the same thing, 1,000 points, new encounters, stage 3, new encounters, and then a boss stage that is unique to the zone that you are in. Each zone has its own set of encounters. I'm not sure if there's any dupes across different zones, because there were a lot of different things that could happen. And these encounters have dungeon and raid adjacent mechanics in them. Hell, one of them is just a rip from King's Fall directly, which might be good or bad depending on your attitude towards that philosophy. They're not anything too insane, but it is more than I feel like I would experience in a typical strike or other just general content. It's on par with what you would experience in a seasonal activity, I feel like. This might actually get some people more into the raid mechanics mindset as a result, which I'm a big fan of. And there's definitely some people out there who have never been exposed to this kind of stuff before. It's only maybe been recently that they have with the coil or something. This is where I believe you'll also be grinding for the exotic class item, so you're probably going to want to get into groups to make it go a little bit faster, as there is a lot of running around to do if you're by yourself. One thing that was causing some friction as a solo is that since activities are worth 450 points, I usually ended up with around 950 to 960 points after 2 encounters, so I never knew if I should just start a new encounter or run around like a maniac trying to get the rest of my kills done. In a group, I don't know if this is going to be a huge problem, but I also probably missed some things like chests or, whatever other pickups that could have sped this up. I think the only strong negative that I had was that it takes place in patrol, and therefore is incredibly easy, save for maybe the final encounter if you are solo. There's no real penalty for dying, though, so it's not a huge deal if you do. This isn't really anything outside of the norm, save for maybe the coil if you run out of the 49 reses or however many they give you now, though. I did like the 2 unique bosses that I got to do. One of them shooting constant beams of pervading darkness, and you're just trying to have to dodge all around them, and then the other just being a massive arena full of enemies. I had a good time soloing these bosses. Speaking of a couple of these bosses, though, the Giga Strand and Stasis guys, they kind of hurt. The Stasis guy does this big AoE slow and freeze thing with stasis crystals, and if you're in the middle of that when that explosion goes off, you're going to get seriously hurt, if not killed outright. It happened to me a couple of times. The Strand guy's just basic staff ranged attack also hurt pretty badly. I remember a couple of times just getting whacked by it in the Legend campaign. Those 2 enemies were the only enemies I was really scared of during the campaign missions. Even in Patrol, they were a little scary sometimes. The other enemies mostly just kind of fell over on patrol, but that's to be expected. I'll have more feedback after we play the whole campaign and maybe do some content that features them a bit more heavily at a higher difficulty. I think that's pretty much everything else that I wanted to discuss from the event that I went to. All in all, pretty excited for Prismatic and the build crafting that's going to come from it, in addition to the exotic class items. I think it's really fun. I also think it's insanely strong based on my very initial impressions, but as time goes on and we get to play with it in a wider range of activities, any weaknesses that Prismatic might have will start to show. In any content where you're just slaying out, I think it goes absolutely crazy. Beyond that, we'll see. I know I didn't talk about stuff like the Pale Heart destination itself and a few other things you might have questions on. I am streaming right now, if you're watching this as this video comes out, twitch.tv/Datto, where you can ask me questions and I will see if I can answer. But also, I wanted to wait for the full experience first before talking about some of the things that I saw. So just stay tuned for some first impressions, hopefully pretty shortly after the campaign is completed. Go check out the other 2 weapons that I did on the exotics, the weapons, and the armor. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.